Hey there, nerds. Welcome to another edition of Two Nerdy Dads. As always, with me is Jason Applegate. Say hey, Jason.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Now, this week is super special. I don't know if you know this, but it is Teacher Appreciation Week.
That
And
it
our very
is.
own Jason Applegate is a teacher, so we want to appreciate Jason.
Thank you very much. I did get a couple of cookies today. So I have been appreciated, and I'm sure the appreciation will continue this week. Hint, hint, any of my students that happen to watch these from time to time.
Very nice. I also appreciate this day. I mean, I appreciate all the hard work you do as well as all the other teachers, but I appreciate this day because we're that much closer to summer when I get
Yes.
Nerdy Jason back and I don't have to share him with the students.
Right. Which this year in particular has been a lot, a lot. So, but yeah, summer we can do this thing much more frequently. I can hopefully start writing again and be posting stuff there because I really haven't had a chance to do that this year and I've missed it. So I'm excited to do that for sure. For sure.
Excellent. And for those that don't know, or this is the first time you're watching, Jason and I went to high school together. So
Yeah.
we had a lot of nerdy time because, you know, you don't work in high school.
Mm-mm.
So when we started Nerdlocker, I immediately got Jason on the phone and was like, hey, dude, we need you. We need the nerd. Let's go. He was happy to oblige. It's been about 6 years now. That's crazy.
It is crazy to think that it's been that long. It really is, but it's gone by so fast because I think we've just been having so much fun with it, for sure.
Exactly. That's what it is. It's fun.
Yep.
All right, let's stop boring the audience and let's get on. What's our topics today, Jason?
Well, I think we got to start with Age of Ultron, because that's the big talk of the weekend. I mean, you had Pacquiao and you had the NFL draft, and Age of Ultron, I think, trumped both of those things, both of those events, if you will, NBA playoffs and NHL playoffs too. And everybody's just talking about Avengers. So I know you didn't get a chance to see it, so I'll try
No.
not to spoil tons, but I'm sure most of it's
La,
already
la,
kind of
la,
out there.
la, 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 la.
Right. Right. Remember the time where we were gonna do the wave that okay, we're done talking about this, and then we just didn't and forgotten it's like 20
I think
minutes
I think
later.
we said we did. We finished everything, spoiled it. We're like, oh yeah, spoiler alert.
Right? So we're not even gonna try that. Like just skip ahead, and if we're still talking about Avengers, then you just skip ahead a little bit further. But I I have to say, as a whole, I enjoyed it. I did. It was entertaining and enjoyable. But it wasn't a very good movie. It wasn't as good as the first Avengers, in my opinion. It wasn't as good as Guardians of the Galaxy. So I think the main issue that I had with it was they were too much of it seemed fabricated. Like they were trying to fit pieces and develop story that just wasn't working from at least for me. I just wasn't engaged really at all. I kind of felt like okay, the first movie they all come together, right? And they have to form this team to beat Loki and the alien invasion. So this one is all about them as a team and their dysfunctional parts and that they're, trying to, work together and there's, some discord there, which kind of works, but I just felt like it was, I don't know, too similar to the first one of like, well, come on, let's get together and work as a team so we can solve this problem. And I just wasn't that excited by it. Um, the other major issue that I had with it is the Black Widow Bruce Banner romance. I thought it was awful, just terrible. I felt like it was okay. Black Widow is a female character, and we want to include her in this story because people are clamoring for that, even though she's not getting her own movie. So, and I think Joss Whedon typically does a good job writing female characters, but I felt like he was forcing something there that didn't work, and he was like, let's give her this, romance with, Bruce Banner. Why not? We tried Captain America. That doesn't work. He's got his dead girlfriend. Iron Man's got a girlfriend all the way, so does Thor. The Hawkeye thing, we played with that in Avengers, but we want to go a different direction. I just felt like it was contrived, and I didn't feel like it really moved her character along. And I read a great article that talked about Black Widow throughout all the movies and how in her first appearance in Iron Man 2, she's nothing but eye candy. And actually, they felt that Favreau or whoever the writers were making a point that they were actually like tongue-in-cheek poking fun at the idea of how females are typically in superhero movies. But then in Captain America 2, she really kind of held her own, and I agree with that 100%. I thought she was great in Captain America 2. Might have been the best part of the movie. She had great screen time. Her character developed. She was this independent woman who both flirted but also teased Captain America in a way that you felt like she doesn't need to be in a relationship. She's a strong, independent woman, and she's helping Captain America out without that being her very defined, limited role of who she is, which was another thing that the article pointed out typically happens in superhero films, is that the female protagonist is only there to make the male hero better, a better person, a better hero, or what have you. And I thought that was really interesting. The one part in Avengers that I thought was working well in Age of Ultron was when she would tell Bruce Banner, "You don't need to protect me. I don't need your protection. I just want to be with you." And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Like, that's a pretty strong statement. That's something that is going against the grain of the typical female role in these movies. But then in the end, what does Hulk do? He protects her. So he doesn't listen to her. And she's all like, "Come back to me, Bruce, like, turn off the cloaking device so I can find you." And he's like, "Nope. I'm going to go protect you by running away so that you don't get hurt." And I was just like, really? And the other thing that bothered me about the film was I didn't really care about Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. So major spoiler here. When Quicksilver dies, I'm just like, okay. It was no big deal. And they threw this sort of red herring that was totally awful, where they give Hawkeye this random family, which just seemed to me like, oh yeah, Hawkeye can't be with Black Widow. We're going to give him a family. So that explains why their little flirtation thing is they're just buds. They're just friends. And I thought that was just like, where is this coming from and why is it in here? And then they're setting it up like, oh, is it Hawkeye? Is Hawkeye going to be... But the only people who are buying in that Hawkeye is going to be the one that dies are morons. And if he would have died, I would have been like, well, that was cliche. But I don't think anybody, really bought into it. So when Quicksilver dies, it wasn't all that big of a like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what a twist. And I felt like they were trying too hard to make it a twist. So...
See, that's the interesting thing. I had heard about the Quicksilver situation, and I have not seen the movie, so I just imagined Quicksilver from Days of Future Past, who was awesome in brief time on screen. Taking that character and how I felt with that character, I was like, man, that is super sad. I wonder why they would waste a character like that. Now hearing you, it's like, interesting. Why you don't even build it up to care about him, and then you take him out. So who really cares?
Yeah, and I think it's just an example of too many characters in a movie. The Quicksilver in the X-Men movie he was fun, and you got immediately invested in him because of his personality and how he contrasted with the other very serious characters in there. You have Iron Man and Hawkeye being smart Alex. Heck, even Thor's funny in this movie. And they all have these, and I'll get to what I really liked about it other than just the fun action. But you have all those guys. There's no room to care about this character. There's just no room in the movie for it, which is too bad. But it kind of, makes sense. It's just how it is. The things I did really like about it was fun watching these actors have fun. Like the witty banter back and forth, and you're just like, gosh, what a buddy film. You know, you could tell they all just get along well together. And you know, they have this little party scene, and they're all hanging out trying to lift Thor's hammer, and it was a great little sequence. My favorite part is Captain America budges it a little bit, and Thor's face is sort of like, and then when he doesn't move it, he's like, oh yeah, you know, like no big deal, no big deal. But just that little moment it just was amusing. So there's good parts to it. The most surprising aspect of it was I loved Ultron. His character was hilarious. Like the lines that he has, and it just was really, really well played. And I was surprised at how humorous his character was. Because he's pretty much a stock villain in the comic books. So they gave him really some personality, and I thought it worked. And then of course I love Vision. When I was a kid, he was my favorite Avenger, was Vision. I think it was mostly just because I liked the way they looked. I thought he was cool looking, and he shot that laser beam out of his forehead. So when that happened in the movie, I was, you know, the kid me got geeked about that, and I thought he brought an interesting aspect to the story as well.
That's very cool. I'm curious to see how these characters develop, because if I'm not mistaken, Paul Bettany is the Vision, and Paul Bettany was the voice of
Jarvis.
His name, Jarvis. Thank you. Yeah. My goodness. Mm-hmm. So yeah. I'm very curious to see how this develops. Don't ruin it for me.
Spoiler, I won't.
Dude. But I'm very excited to see the movie. What I liked about your honest opinion, because I've read a lot of people who do like it. But a lot of times I'll go into a movie and I'll go to see it. Case in point was Interstellar. And there was so much hype. And clearly with two young kids, I don't get to see it right away. So I saw it, I think, a month after it came out. And I was like, really? This is it? Oh, man. Now I've seen it since, and I think that movie is phenomenal after I've seen it now about 10 times. But the hype after seeing it in the theaters of a month of everybody loving it, it was like, oh, geez, this isn't as good as I thought it would be. So I kind of like a movie when it's reviewed and it's like, well, here's the good and here's the bad, as opposed to, oh my God, it's awesome, you have to see this.
It is a lot of fun. It's a huge spectacle, and it's very enjoyable. It's just the story's kind of lacking, and that's not that surprising, because how much more can you really develop the story and those characters with so many of them in it? And then another review that I read that criticized it said it spent too much time as a sort of trailer for the individual movies that are going to branch off from it, like Captain America 3 and Thor 3 and things like that. And thinking back on it, I was like, yeah, I guess it kind of did do that a little bit too much. But you should still see it. It's very entertaining. The kids will enjoy it if they can handle some of the violence. And there's just some great moments in it. You know, the Hulkbuster scene is superbly enjoyable. So it's a fun ride. I just kind of wanted a little more depth to it. But hey, it's a superhero film. Sometimes it's just good for them to be fun.
Well, I think also part of the problem is that Marvel has made such a great effort to put these movies in cohesion, with now announcing an end goal, sort of, with Civil War and where we're going with Phase 3 and beyond. But I think a lot of people forget this started with just an Iron Man movie and a Hulk movie. And there was no clear path, and it was a gamble that these were going to make it, because Marvel Studios, as is, did not exist.
Nope.
Paramount still owned Iron Man, and Universal still owned Hulk. So it really has come a long way. And I think with, trying to think here, it was certainly not Iron Man 2. I guess it was about Avengers when they started planning how we're going to get all these characters together and make a cohesive story onward. And I think they're still kind of having some of the fallout with, well, how do we do that? How do we build to get us to Civil War? How do we go on to all these other, the Infinity Gauntlet and all this stuff? How do we get there with what we started? And I think they're still kind of working their way through it, especially with such a huge ensemble cast that's in the Avengers.
And here's my worry about this. As cool as it is to have all the movies tie together and to have it tie into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all that stuff, and we get all geeked up about that, Remember this Marvel cartoons in the 90s? That I felt like was one of the flaws, is that they were so continual. You had to see this episode, which tied into this episode, which tied into this one, and it ended up getting too convoluted, like the comic books can at times. And really, this film did start to feel like the big events that you and I are getting kind of tired of because of how often they do them in both the two major companies. That you lose storytelling because they're so concerned about, you know, bringing in new readers and rebooting things and having these huge events where all the heroes have to gather together in some sort of way and fight. Let's see how many names we can put on the page and stuff like that, that you lose some storytelling with it. So I'm a little concerned about that. But hey, there's something to be said with just having, you know, Hulk fight Iron Man on screen, and you know, in Captain America, Iron Man's gonna square off against Cap, I'm sure, and that we'll be excited about that too. So,
well, very cool. I do look forward to seeing it. I'm hoping it's this weekend. Speaking of weekend, last weekend, like you said, was a huge Saturday. Was like amazing, and it was free comic book day.
Yes,
now, you being the braggart you are, put out a social media picture holding up a winning lottery ticket. For what did you win, Jason Applegate?
I won a X-Men number 100. X-Men number 100. It is the issue where the old X-Men square off against the new X-Men from, you know, giant-sized X-Men, and it's got Professor X in the middle, who is standing up with his arms raised, saying, "Fight!" It's a classic cover. I've seen it duplicated in posters and all kinds of stuff, and it's one I've always wanted. So my local comic book store always, you know, they have a free comic book day like everybody does, and they try to make it a big event. And it's a small store, but they do a pretty good job. They had a couple of stormtroopers there, or a clone trooper and a stormtrooper this year that were there to take pictures with the kids. They have a couple local artists there that'll do free sketches for you and sign stuff. And they're, of course, selling their comics there as well, and their prints and things like that. And then, of course, you get the free comics. So as a whole, the event was great, but what he also does is he'll do some trivia, and if you answer trivia questions, you'll get little, you know, trinkety prizes and things like that they're still pretty cool. I think there were hero clicks or something that he was giving out as prizes for the trivia questions. But the cool thing is he gets the glass cases out, and he has comics in there that are either, you know, really cool old collectible comics like the X-Men number 100. He had the first appearance of Gambit, X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, whatever number that one is. I can't think of it off the top of my head. Something like that. It's got Gambit on the cover with a very young Storm at his side. And
I actually have that one. Pretty happy.
Yeah. Well, that's the reason I didn't bid on that one, was I already had it. So I was like, that is, because in my opinion, it was the coolest of all of the ones that he had available. And then he had some newer comics that were signed. And while I love Walking Dead, just for me personally, having a signed Walking Dead comic, and it wasn't like number 1 or anything, just wasn't, that was something that I would like turn around and sell on eBay. And that's not what I want to do. You know, I don't want to win something just so I turn around and sell it to somebody who wants it. You know, if somebody wants that, I want them to win it. So I was excited to put my raffle tickets on X-Men number 100. And you bought, I think it was 15 for $10 or 1 each. So I did the old 15 for $10, slapped them all down on X-Men number 100, because I'm like, that's what I really want. I'm putting all my eggs in one basket. And I ended up winning it. And so it was a worthy gamble, and I was super excited about it. And yes, I did brag and post it onto social media, because I knew people like you would really truly appreciate just how much that enriched my experience. So,
oh heck yeah, that's a phenomenal win, man. I'm very impressed and very envious.
Well, and my kids had a great time too. They got a couple of sketches. My son had one of the artists sketch a Batman versus Daredevil little sketch on it. You know, they're little cards, but they sketched it out on there, and it turned out really nice. I should have grabbed it so I could show you guys. But his one of his best buddies loves Daredevil, and of course my son loves Batman because good parenting. But they always have these fun little arguments of who would win in a fight. So he got the drawing, and then my daughter got She-Hulk. That was her. She loves She-Hulk. She's all about She-Hulk and Squirrel Girl, which I think's awesome. I love both those characters. So it was, although she did have a Supergirl shirt on. So for a while there, she was like, well, should I get Supergirl? And I'm like, well, honey, if you only want Supergirl because you have her shirt on, no, get the character that you really actually want. So she did. She got a She-Hulk flexing, and it was very, very cool of the artist to do that, to take that time. I thought, what a cool opportunity to have them sketch out. It was black and white, just pencil sketches, but free, and they whipped them out within like a good 5 minutes or so. But there's this huge line of like at least 80 or so people, and they're doing sketches for almost everybody that came in the door. So how about you? I saw pictures that you had posted as well of Free Comic Book Day. How was it for you guys?
We went and visited our favorite local shop, Maximum Comics. Oh, say the name of your comic shop real quick.
Oh, it's Collector's Corner in Midland, Michigan.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
I want to make sure they get the props.
Yeah, yeah.
But out here in Vegas, it was Maximum Comics. We went up to the store 3, because now they technically have 4 stores now. But we went up to store 3. There was a line, which was really cool. I always like seeing that. Several people dressed up. They brought in I think it's We Go Games, which is a bus that has video game units and stuff like that the kids can play in, which is really cool. And we got some of the books I wanted were gone, which is not surprising because we do not get up at the crack of dawn and wait in line. But the one I wanted, which is totally not appropriate for kids, is Fight Club. I'm very curious how they're going to be writing that sequel into a comic book. Mm-hmm. But the ones we did pick up, the kids loved Simpsons. What else did we get? Secret Wars. Mm-hmm. Man, that's how bad my memory is. I can't even remember what else we got. I remember those two.
Batman 12-cent one and a Superman 12-cent. They looked like they were older books, and maybe mine just had those left over from last time or something.
I can't even remember if there was a DC book, and if there was, what it was. I probably would have put it back because I'm really not happy with Convergence or whatever. But
nice.
So they got their comic books, and then I let them pick out a trade paperback because I want them to actually support the shop and put some money back into the system. So Madison got a trade paperback of Powerpuff Girls, which I don't know anything about. I didn't watch the cartoon.
Awesome! Oh my gosh, that cartoon is so good.
Well, I'm reading it with her, and it's interesting. It's very cool. And then James, my little brony, he got a My Little Pony trade paperback, which their stories are really good. If you have the opportunity and the want, and I think it's IDW puts out the My Little Pony books. They're actually a pretty good read. Really good lessons and stories. I really enjoy reading that to the kids. But then they got sketches too. One of our local artists, Dan45, who we actually saw the week before at Wizard World Con. That was funny. He was at Maximum too. And they also got their Jay made it so actually Nerd Bobby was the one who created it, a big placard with a cutout so you could have an identity, an ID card for one of the Avengers.
That's awesome.
So up at store 3, it was the Hulk. So the kids got their picture taken as if they were the Hulk with their identity badge. Then we went down to store number 1, which is actually a little closer to our house, and there they had Captain America ID badge. So we got the Captain America badge. We didn't get any comics that time because we already got our comics, so no big deal. But we got to just hang out with a bunch of nerds, and I got a couple sketches just like you, and it was fun. I did not win a raffle. I'm not a winner. I'm from Cleveland. What can I say? I'm not a winner.
Hey, those Cavs are doing all right, though. You got something going there.
So yeah, Free Comic Book Day is awesome. I'm still shocked at the number of people that don't know it exists. Yet it seems like every year the shops are more and more busy.
Yeah.
So I'm glad the word's getting out. I'm glad it's bigger and bigger and bigger. I wish more people would know about it. At least the normal people that we deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think every time I've gone, it's gotten bigger and bigger. And it's cool to hear the events. I think those Avengers cards, I saw the pictures of that. I thought that was what a great idea. And then I think the point that you made is those of us who do know about Free Comic Book Day and who are regulars, make sure you do, support and put some money into it too. I know that Andy at Collector's Corner had like a 25% off of all regular merchandise, or 25% off, sorry, all regular merchandise. So that's, my kids grabbed a couple of books that they wanted to get too. So that was kind of nice. Very cool. Very cool.
I will say I was very disappointed. I just randomly, one employee was there, and he might have just been a volunteer, because I know Jay brings in volunteers this time because it's so big.
Yeah.
You can't get all the employees. All the employees don't cover it. But I asked about a trade paperback at the House of M, because when I got back into comics, I came back with Second Coming and Hope Summers and that storyline, and I missed why there were no mutants. Of course, I'd heard the story, but I wanted to read it. So I'm like, do you have X-Men House of M? Is it a trade paperback or something? Kid had no clue what I was talking about. I'm like, oh. And luckily, one of the customers ahead of us heard it, and he's like, yeah, there is a collector trade paperback, and it just collects just the House of M books. I'm like, cool. So the employee went to look for it, and this is where it was cool. He didn't know what I was talking about, but he went and got more information. He came back with about 5 trade paperbacks that collected all the ancillary stories.
Oh, but not the main one.
And he's like, we don't have the House of M. And I'm like, okay.
At least
so unfortunately, close your ears if you're a big collector. I went digital and I got it. So I digitally now have it, which is, I know it's against the rules.
I don't mind the digital comics. I think if you're getting it just to read, for the readability of the story, why not go digital? It's easier. You don't have, a lot of us, we don't have the shelf space for the trade paperbacks and such. So if you can get it digital, if all you want is to read the story. If you want the collectability of it, then yeah, go in those, the boxes and dig those babies out, and or win them in a raffle.
Very nice. Oh, and I got a wink on that one.
Yeah.
And just that wink makes me think of the Suicide Squad and some things I'd like to do with Jason.
You just froze again, though. Oh no, wait! Now you're back. You didn't froze. You just were holding that. That was intense. That was intense. Oh, what did you think of that picture? I didn't get a really, really good look at it, but I couldn't tell. And I don't know the Suicide Squad members super well, but it was hard for me to tell who was who except for Harley Quinn.
Yeah, I very similar. I know from reading 1 or 2 books in the New 52 when they relaunched out of curiosity. I know individually the characters, but as a team, I'm not very familiar with how they work. I did see them on the Arrow, so I know that one. But I was able to pick out a couple characters, but to me, it really looked like if this was a movie from the 90s. Like some of the costumes were just goofy. Some of the character makeup and stuff was goofy. I liked Harlequin. I liked the way she looks, but Harlequin's more than just a look. It's an attitude and the laugh and the smile and all that. So that's going to come, I hope. But yeah, it just was like, I wonder why they went that route with that look.
Yeah, I don't know either. And I was trying to find an image of it, just Googling it, and I was really having trouble trying to find it. But I've heard other people say the same thing about the 90s feel to it. Maybe it's just a promotional picture. we said that last week with Jared Leto and the Joker. So maybe it's not. Maybe this is really what we're getting, and we should actually be kind of concerned. And to an extent, Marvel's kind of spoiled us, and we want Suicide Squad to be Marvel's version of Guardians of the Galaxy, this B-list kind of throw these characters together that people don't really know that well and make it work. but gosh, it doesn't look. I don't know. I'm worried.
And it's weird because I really like director David Ayer. He wrote. I'm sorry, he wrote one of the best movies I've seen in a long time. Back in 2001, Training Day, and he's done a lot of other ones. I had to watch Fury and Suicide Squad, so I'm really hoping it's got a good story. That's what's going to make it good or bad.
Yeah.
But he's also directing it, which makes me really, really nervous because he's not known as a director. Like he did do Fury, but he also did Sabotage, which I think is that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. And Chase, Nerd Chase, reviewed that for us and gave it one of the worst of the year last year. So I'm like,
wow.
Yikes. Yeah, so it's I'm nervous. It's Warner Brothers and DC, so I shouldn't be nervous. I should just automatically know it's not going to be awesome or they're going to screw it up. But yeah, don't know what to think yet. But speaking of pictures being released, did you see the Vanity Fair spread for Star Wars: The Force Awakens?
No, I did not see that. Fill me in. I'm gonna look for it here. Vanity Square
What did you do on
spread.
May the 4th? Did you skip that day?
You know what? I was in such a I was in such the force that yeah, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. Yeah, basically I did. That was what, Monday? What was I
Yes.
doing on Monday? I have no idea. I don't know why I didn't see it.
Let me let you in on it. Ann
Okay.
Leibovitz shot some pictures of, and I say pictures like she's some amateur you and I shooting pictures. She did a photo spread for Vanity Fair of Star Wars: The Force Awakens, and I believe it was the cover. I don't buy print magazines anymore, so I have no idea for sure. But I think it was the cover of Harrison Ford with what's her name? I don't remember the younger girl's name.
Yeah, I know. I'm seeing that one right now. It's got Chewbacca on it, and then our black stormtrooper.
And they're in the one that are in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon.
Yes, yeah. That's what I'm looking at right now.
That was very cool. They show a picture of Adam Driver. It kind of looks almost fake. So if it wasn't Annie Leibovitz, I'd be like, okay, maybe it was CG'd or something. But it has Adam Driver in the forefront with two totally new-looking snow troopers in the background, and they're almost like ghosted, faded. So that's why I'm saying it almost looks like it's on a green screen, which was pretty cool. It shows Lupita Nyong, and I'm not exactly sure what character she is, but she's definitely prepared to do some CG work because she's got all the little dots on her face to record her emotions and her facial expressions and stuff like that. And then the Galactic Travelers with smugglers and riffraff, Hall of Pirate, Maz Kanata's Castle. And those were pretty cool because it's nice to see we're getting real characters and not just CG, which is Jar Jar Binks. Yeah. So it was really cool to see more Star Wars.
Yeah, I'm looking at these and they all look sharp, man. The stormtrooper with the cape over his shoulder.
I think my favorite was the Chrome Trooper. Is that the one you're looking at?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Yeah.
And do you watch Game of Thrones?
I do. Yes.
That's Brienne from Game of Thrones.
Really?
The blonde, the woman who's a knight. Well, she doesn't want to be a knight because she's
That's her.
That's her. I'm like, oh, that's amazing.
And she's the one in the preview that's walking down the hallway that I'm like, oh, what's that story going to be about? Now, the girl with the dots on her face, who's she supposed to be?
I'm not sure. I know it's a CG character. It doesn't say here. Oh, she's Maz Kanata, the guy, the castle, the character who owns that castle with all the riffraff. So I don't know what that character is.
I don't know either.
I think that's before. Once upon a time, I knew everything there was to know about Star Wars, but as more movies come out, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my son will be heartbroken because he has been just clamoring for Ventress to be in the movies, and that was who he had his heart set on. That actress, portraying is Ventress, which why he loves Ventress I don't get, but the Clone Wars is a good, and we've talked about this before. I have enjoyed the Clone Wars. I actually think that that animated series is better than the prequels. They do a better job of portraying both Obi-Wan and especially Anakin as a more interesting and relatable character.
Yes.
And they even tackle the politics that Lucas was fumbling with in his movies far better in that series. That and I think they do a good job of that. But he was dead set on that. That's who that was going to be. So I'll wait. I won't say anything, and when the movie comes out, that he can deal with it then.
It crushes little heart. Poor
That's
guy.
right. Life is full of disappointment. Sorry, Kate. Very
So
cool.
moving from one Lucasfilm project to another, Kathleen Kennedy came out and basically made it known that Indiana Jones is moving forward. From what I understand, it is not a reboot or a remake. It's moving forward with, I guess, number 5. And it was kind of speculated when Disney bought Lucasfilm that Indiana Jones was going to be part of that package. And now, yes, it's part of that package. How that works with Paramount owning the first 4, I have no clue. I'm assuming it's going to be something along the lines of Disney working with Fox to get the new digital downloads. And then I didn't buy them because I have so many copies of Star Wars. But from what I understand, Disney put their intro in front of the movies now, as they should. They paid a lot of money for it, except for the first one. I believe the first one is still Fox. So I'm assuming they'll work it out. It seems like studios are much more open to work things out like that because they're going to make money in the end. So why not? But yes, we will get a new Indiana Jones. Who's going to be in it? I don't know.
Not Shia LaBeouf, hopefully.
That's what I don't know. I don't know if Dog or whatever his name was, Pitbull, whatever he was. I can't remember his name. Slick. I don't know if he's going to be in it or not. Yeah, but I'm assuming Harrison will be in it.
Huh. It was so miserable watching him in 4. Like, he looked, and I'm hoping that this won't be the case in Star Wars either, but watching him in 4, I swear I'm going to have to watch it on DVD or Blu-ray one time, because when I was watching it in the theaters, there was a time where he was on screen and I could just see on his face that he was like, what the hell am I doing this for? It just looked like he just was like, why am I doing this? And the whole movie felt that way. It just felt like this just wasn't working, and it wasn't gonna work at all. So I don't know. I'd almost rather them just reboot it, or pick it up, have the character who's the son or whatever go and make it the Cold War in the 50s and move on with Indiana Jones and have it be someone else. I don't know. I'm still for rebooting it. I think it's a great character. I could see somebody else doing it. Think about Star Trek, and how many people probably thought, who could ever be William Shatner, Kirk? And look at how awesome, Chris Pine, that's his name, right, has done as a he almost impersonates Shatner. He's made it his own enough, but it's why couldn't they do that? I'd be all for it, but maybe I'm just not as much of an Indiana Jones purist.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy The Last Crusade. That's my favorite. The Raiders of the Lost Ark is good. I really am not a big fan of Temple of Doom. And I don't even remember the name of the last one. Crystal Skull.
Crystal Skull. Yeah.
It was a movie that I watched. Happened.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It happened. Yeah, Raiders is my favorite. I will always love Raiders of the Lost Ark. In a lot of ways, I think it still stands up well as a movie. I mean, some of the effects now today are a little bit cheesy, but yeah, man, it just, the story and the characters just stand up well. And Indiana Jones is such a likable hero. I don't know who else really, who else do you compare him to that's as likable? He's like James Bond, but American, because he's very much more rough and tumble, self-made man kind of a thing, whereas Bond has always sort of had a silver spoon up his butt. But yeah, I can't think of anybody else who's as likable in the way that Indiana Jones is.
No, that's a good point. That is a good point. So I'm going to pull a little switcheroo. We were going to talk about one topic, but I just remembered one that I found very intriguing. And I hate to overdo the Star Wars, but it was just announced last week that Josh Trank is no longer going to be directing one of the offshoot Star Wars films. It was going to be the second one. He's not on the project anymore. And it basically came out, because at first it was like, okay, he's leaving. That's weird. Why would you leave a Star Wars? No, it was basically he is off the project because of difficulties he had during Fantastic Four. And I don't know if it just was common knowledge, if somebody from Star Wars, from Disney called, and basically he's not welcome because of his inability to control the set and his sort of, I don't want to say temper tantrums, but his meltdowns on set. And I was very, very surprised at that.
Just unprofessional or something, huh?
Yeah, so we didn't get a lot of news on the set of Fantastic Four, and the news we did get was really disjointed, sort of odd, weird news. So I guess I'm not terribly surprised, but I'm a little bummed because of his work on Chronicle. That movie was just so original and fantastic for a team with superpowers. Well, not a team, but a group of kids who gain superpowers. So I was really, really curious to see what he was going to do with a one-off Star Wars flick. And it might have even been, because I know there's discussions of having sort of a Boba Fett origin one, which would have been very cool. And that might have been the one that he was tied to, but I'm not 100% sure on that one.
Yeah, that would be a really cool story, because the last time we see him in the films, at least, is as a kid, And so how did he become who he is that we see in, Empire and Return of the Jedi? That would be awesome if they tell that story. Sounds to me like it's good that he's not on the project, though. If he can't be professional, then yeah, why bother with him? Do you know what the other one was? I know they're doing a TV show, right? Spin-off, kind of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. style, but it's like the Rogue Squadron or something.
No, the Rogue Squadron is going to be the first offshoot.
That's the movie.
Yeah, episode 7 to episode 8. There was a rumor back when Lucas still owned it that he was making sort of a, I don't want to say soap opera because that's got a negative connotation, but he was making a drama series that was going to be a TV show, and it was going to take place between the events of 3 and 4, but mainly deal with the politics in the Senate. But that obviously, from what I understand, they had 100 episodes written, but they just couldn't get financing, or it was too expensive. I'm not exactly sure. I'm sure that's
realized long. It would be stupid. Yeah. No one would want to watch
it. The West Wing and base? What?
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, hopefully those do get made, because I think that would be exciting, especially the Boba Fett side of things, or even just a bounty hunter. That would make a good TV show. It's just like some bounty hunter type of shows would be kind of cool, but maybe not. Maybe that would also be stupid.
With Dengar sitting off in the corner, pouting.
Is that the one with the toilet paper around his head?
Yes. Right. He's the worst.
Yes. He's awful. Prune Face is pretty bad, though, too. Although he wasn't a bounty hunter. He was just one of Jabba's little guys. But he was one of the very few figures that you could actually find in, like, 1985 in the stores. You could find Ewoks and Prune Face. Lots of Prune Face. Cool. So lots of Star Wars news, but you had mentioned, and I had heard wind of this, but hadn't actually seen it anywhere, though, that Tom Hardy, known for, of course, his portrayal as Bane in Batman, but also recently he's in the Mad Max, right? And is he Max?
He's Max.
He wants to be the Punisher in a Marvel movie, which I think would be fantastic. What are your thoughts? Do you know any more about that, or is it just him saying,
I
"Hey"?
don't. I guess he made it known that he wants to be Punisher, and I'll be honest. Full. I have not seen either Punisher movie because I really didn't care to. I'm not terribly familiar with Punisher from the comic books, but the fact that Marvel now owns Punisher, cool. I'm excited by it. Seeing what Marvel did with Daredevil,
Mhm.
and I know it's different because the Daredevil's a TV show, basically 10 hours worth or 12 hours worth,
Mhm.
whereas the Punisher would probably more likely be a movie. But I'm excited. I love Tom Hardy. I don't know why I did this, but I went and I've seen now all the Star Trek movies, and I had never seen Nemesis, and I didn't realize he's the bad guy in Nemesis, who is
Oh, I
a
didn't know that.
clone of Patrick Stewart.
Hmm.
And it's just like, what is this story? It was awful, which is pretty much Star Trek. But I was shocked to see him because he's kind of a slender, skinny dude, and I'm like, that's not the Tom Hardy I know. I know Tom Hardy from Inception and
Right,
Dark Knight Rises. So I was pretty
right,
surprised. But
right.
yeah, I think he's Mad Max, and Mad Max to me isn't terribly different than Frank Castle. So
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it fits. You should check out the Punisher movie, the first one. It's got John Travolta is the bad guy in it, and he's But I thought
Are
I
they,
can't remember his
does
name.
Frank Castle take on Scientology? Is that the storyline?
He should. Only Frank Castle could take on Scientology.
Well, he's after the mob, right? So that's basically the same thing.
Yeah, basically. And it's got Mystique's in it. Why can't I think of her name right now?
Rebecca
She
Marora
was,
Romaine.
yeah, Rebecca Romaine, and she was still Stamos then. Now she's not. She's free. Woo! But she was in it too. And then the guy who played, and I can't think of his name off the top of my head right now, who played the
Thomas Jane.
Punisher. It is Thomas Jane. Good job. Was good. I thought he was fantastic. And then the second one that came out that was like War Journal was just no good. It was just bad. Bad. So you should give the Thomas Jane one a shot because I think it's worth watching. It's very much in the vein of those Arnold Schwarzenegger movies that you and I grew up with, you know, Commando. Um, it reminds me a lot of Commando for some reason. I don't know why. But there's something about a movie where this dude just goes out for revenge against a whole bunch of other dudes with guns, and he's just better at it. And that's basically what Punisher is, and it's basically, what Punisher in the comics is, and so I think it fits pretty darn well. So I don't know. I think Tom Hardy would make a great Frank Castle.
Very cool. Very cool. I'd be curious. And like I said, Marvel owns it now. It's back in their hands. So let's see what they can do.
The other thing, talking about all the stuff that Marvel's getting their hands back on, did we ever really talk about and clarify? Because maybe you can also clarify it for me. When Marvel has, they have shared rights with Sony for Spider-Man now, isn't that right?
Yes. I'm not exactly sure of the deal. I've heard conflicting things. It might be similar to the deal they have with Hulk, which again is conflicting. Is they are unable to make individual movies with Spider-Man, but when it's a team up, they can do that a la Avengers. Or I would assume since it's Civil War is going to go into Captain America 3, then Captain America 3, but they can't make a Spider-Man solo movie. Now
Right.
that might be
Okay.
something that's with they work on later or something, and I can only imagine how they're going to split the profits up. But yeah, they from what I understand, as long as it's a team movie, then Spider-Man is open to Marvel.
That is
But it's
really
also goes
interesting.
further that Marvel gets to pick. From what I understand, Marvel's picking the actor and the storyline and all that stuff
Yeah.
too. So I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting. And it made me what because one of my students was asking me, well, does that mean that do you think that there will be an individual Spider-Man film first, or will we see him in the Avengers or Captain America or something like that instead. And I honestly didn't have an answer for him. So and I don't think it matters either way, although I'd like to see him in just the Avengers to begin with, because I mean we all know Spider-Man's movie or his story, so we don't really need to have that whole thing told again. But on the same note, you have a whole new character playing, a whole new actor, sorry, playing Spider-Man. So maybe it would be good if that actor got his own movie first before he jumped into the other films. I don't know. But I thought that that was kind of interesting. The other thing that I find really interesting, and it's something that Andy, my comic book guy, brought up about the sort of shared properties and such, is that the Fantastic Four movie, of course, is coming out, and Fantastic Four, the comic book, is coming to an end. Like the last issue just came out. And from what I understand, at least according to Andy's perspective, it's that Marvel is basically saying, okay, you have the rights to Fantastic Four. We're not making comics for them anymore, for those characters, until you give up those rights. It seems like they're almost strong-arming them, or at least maybe boycotting the characters to some extent or something like that. By discontinuing the comic book and bringing the comic book to an end, while like literally right before the Fantastic Four movie comes out, there is no Fantastic Four comic book that will hit the shelves, which I think is really interesting. And Andy certainly thinks that's exactly the reason. Is it's basically a, oh yeah, well, take this kind of move by Marvel. So I don't know. Have you heard anything about that aspect, about the Fantastic Four and the timing of the movie and the end of the comic books, or is that news to you?
I've heard that exact same thing. I've read it several times, and I'm on the fence on this one, whether it's a conspiracy theory or if it could potentially be true. One of the reasons why I wanted to read House of M is the moment Scarlet Witch says no more mutants. Mm-hmm. It's sort of the way it was described was that it's Marvel's way of saying, Fox, you're done. You get no more of our properties when it comes to mutants, because we just said no more mutants. Because Fox owns the rights to all mutants that Marvel has made in the past, and anything they make in the future. Mm. But what I read was that by them saying no more mutants, they're not creating mutants anymore. So no new characters like that. Now, I don't understand how that exactly works, because I know with Second Coming, there started to pop up new mutants, and I wasn't paying close enough attention when I was reading it. Did they just not call them mutants? Did they call them gifted individuals or something? I don't know. I assumed they were mutants, so I can't say for sure. But I have read that Marvel goes to great lengths to not promote a property that isn't their own, meaning they don't own the TV movie rights or what have you.
Right. Well, with S.H.I.E.L.D., they have all these heroes coming out, and they're calling them Inhumans, and referring to them in that way. And I think that, and I know for a fact that the character who I hate, Skye, is supposed to be one of the more obscure mutants from one of the X-Men storylines that I had not even heard of. But apparently that's who she's supposed to be. So it sounds like they're going in that direction to some extent. I think it would be a shame if they just got rid of using the word mutant, because that's just, that is Marvel. Like, that is X-Men. They were mutants. Like, if they start calling them Inhumans and stuff in the comics, that's going to drive me nuts. It's like, look, let's just share. And, Fox, look, hopefully what happens with Spider-Man is successful and everybody else follows suit and realizes, like, hey, this is too good of an opportunity to pass up.
Well, I think that's a missed opportunity we as fans had, is unfortunately Fox got their act together and did X-Men First Class, which was pretty good, and then Days of Future Past, which was really good. Mm-hmm. So they're back on track. I think Fantastic Four could easily, especially if these Josh Trank rumors are true, could easily go in the toilet again, and they might lose it. They might lose the property on that one, and they might not care after 3 movies that are okay. But I think X-Men is just too too big a franchise for them to give up, and they have so many characters. Because you look at their offshoots, they've only done 2: Wolverine and soon to be Deadpool.
Yeah.
There was talk of a Magneto movie once upon a time, but they have so many characters to choose from. I can't imagine they will just give that property up easily.
Yeah, it's certainly, I mean, Wolverine is a much more popular character. I mean, other than Spider-Man, is anyone more popular than Wolverine? I don't know. I mean, Iron Man now is, but certainly wouldn't have been 10 years ago, or 15 years ago. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. Fantastic Four has always struggled, though. I think it's always struggled as a comic too. And I'm not sure why. I mean, I'm not sure why it struggles, but I'm also not sure why people like it. I feel like it should either just die or be really successful. I don't get either one. I sort of like the Human Torch. I kind of like Thing. I think it's its strongest if it's science fiction, which was kind of what they created it for, was as a science fiction magazine. And I felt like that's where its strengths are. And it looked like the movie was going back that direction and playing it, this new movie, as a sci-fi-ish movie, whereas the old ones, the last 2 really bad ones with Jessica Alba, were definitely superhero movies, you know, tights movies. And they were cheesy and they just don't work.
Yeah, I'm not terribly familiar with Fantastic Four. It sounds weird saying that out loud, but because they're such a icon in Marvel's history, and I was a Marvel guy for such a long time, I never read the Fantastic Four unless there was a crossover. They, like you said, they just didn't interest me. It's like I live with a family. Why do I want to read about a family? Yeah, I know they got special powers and all that, but I don't want to hear their bickering and whatnot. So yeah, I just never got into it.
I think they're your father's comic book hero team. You know what I mean? Like, my dad liked the Fantastic Four and loved Thor. That was one of his favorites too. And I feel like that's just where they kind of are. They just haven't, you know, updated very well with today.
And you, as a comic book, you're really defined by your villains. And I don't see Doctor Doom as all that impressive. And I think Galactus is stupid because it is. So yeah, you're just defined by your villains, and so I'm not impressed. It's like, yeah, whatever. Okay.
Yeah, I love Doctor Doom. I think he's one of the coolest looking villains. I mean, you don't have Darth Vader without Doctor Doom. I mean, he is, you know, he and Black Manta, you know, just their look is awesome. And so I love him as a villain, but he's crossed over and fought Spider-Man and the Avengers and the X-Men, even though he was a Fantastic Four villain. But let's see how they do him in this new movie, because in the other 2, he was awful. He was terrible. And I think you're right. I think the Fantastic, the whole family thing, sort of like, whatever. I agree. It's just never been one that I've really completely gotten into. I've heard there's some good Thing storylines, but all that stuff is the retro. It's the 1960s and early 70s that it was in its heyday, and it was really, you know, making some noise and saying some interesting things. And I think it just is one of those things that just exists in its little time period, and that's good. That's great. We should all, you know, respect it for what it is, but some things just don't last. I don't know.
No, it's sort of funny because the other outstanding property that Marvel doesn't own, that's a big name, is Prince Namor. And that is with Universal. And we've already seen what Universal did with the Hulk. Killed him. Probably the only person that's been able to defeat the Hulk is Universal. And as their first mutant and one of their first books, you would think Marvel would want to do something with Namor, but so far I've not even heard anything coming close to them doing anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, for me, it's always this. Go out on the street and find somebody, you know, in the mall somewhere or something, and be like, hey, have you heard of the superhero Namor? And like 9 out of 10 of them are going to be like, who more? What? You know, whereas, all the other title, like all the other characters they've heard of. I mean, even people on the Fantastic Four, if you're like, hey, have you heard, the Human Torch, they'd be like, oh yeah, that's the guy that catches on fire, right? Or the Thing, or Mr. Like, they know those characters. But gosh, Namor, I wouldn't want to go see a
But
Namor movie.
I could argue with you that before the movie Iron Man, you might have gotten a few more people that were like, yeah, I know Iron Man, but I don't think he was all that much more popular than Submariner. And Thor, as far as the Marvel character, yeah, they might know the god Odin and Thor in Norse mythology, but they might not have known Thor as far as the Marvel comic books.
Yeah,
so I think if Marvel wanted to tell a compelling story, they could do that.
Well,
and they might be waiting for DC's Aquaman to be like, well, let's see how that goes, and then maybe we'll make a play for it.
That's a good point. The other thing, though, that I would argue about that, and you're making an awesome point, is the reason that Iron Man, though, was successful was, one, the story was good, but also Robert Downey Jr. I mean, he is Tony Stark. There was that time the reporter calls him Tony and then was like, oh, I'm sorry. And Robert Downey Jr. was like, it's the same thing. Like, he even himself, like, admitted, like, that's just me on screen, like, I'm just having fun. And that's made that character.
That first movie where he's like, I am Iron Man.
Yeah.
And it's in the movie, clearly. But when he says that, it's like, yes, you are, Robert Downey Jr. You're Iron Man.
But he made that character what it is, and he captured the character perfectly. That's how that character is supposed to be, but he made it iconic. And that character is relatable and iconic. And I just feel like Namor's not. It really isn't.
So you're saying we need to find a jerky Atlantean to play in the movie.
Yeah.
That might be tough. Tall order, huh?
Yeah, he's just not an interesting character, is the point. It's the same fear that I had for Thor before that movie came out. I was like, oh my gosh, Thor, if he does that Thor speak, thy hammer is Thor, that really cheesy font, that they always have for him and stuff too. It just, you couldn't see it translating, but because the cast was set for Iron Man, I think people gave it a shot, and I thought Kenneth Branagh did a great job writing it and directing it, and he made Thor a compelling character because he was human. He had flaws. It was the pride that he was dealing with and had to learn from. The fall from grace and all that stuff was very relatable. I don't know what you do with Namor. I just honestly don't. But I just don't know enough about him as a character.
No, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know any of his storylines, but I think there could be a compelling story of his disdain for sort of humanity, and it would almost be like Magneto's, because Namor is typically referred to as one of the first mutants. Is that you could have this disdain instead of coming out with the mutant name because of Fox. This disdain he has because you treat us different, or you have no respect for the oceans. And yeah, I know that's towing the line with Aquaman, but it's not terribly different with what Submariner does as far as, sort of having this dislike of humanity. But something may happen where he has to embrace humanity to save the day or whatever. That's my awesome screenwriting skills at work.
There you go. You should write the movie then. Let's go for it. Eco-terrorist turned good guy. That's how we'll pitch it.
Yeah, that always works. Where's Captain Planet? How's that doing?
Yeah. That is, yeah. Speaking of really bad 80s stuff, Superman 3 was on TV today, and I was having a grand old time watching that.
When's the last time you saw I love Superman 3.
I do too.
People hate that, but Richard Pryor is the man.
Well, my students love B-Movie. That terrible animated movie with Jerry Seinfeld in it. It's an awful movie. Awful. But they love it because they grew up with it, right? It was a movie they saw when they were kids, and they identified with it in some way and found it humorous. And I can't stand it. But Superman 3 is my B movie. Like, that is it's not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it is so much fun to watch for us.
Where else are you going to see Clark fight Superman?
That's what I loved. The super
Oh.
ego and the id. I mean, it was like I was psychoanalyzing the movie, you know? Here's the id is, and the kryptonite is released the id, and he's this. I love when his hair's a little greasier and he's got the stubble because he's evil. But also the best is that his costume is darker too. Like he's got a dark. He actually looks like the Man of Steel Superman from Zack Snyder. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't even realize it. Like totally looks exactly the same. And he's, you know, at the bar flicking peanuts and breaking the glass, and then he uses his heat vision, and but then little Ricky says something to him as he's flying away. Superman, you're just in a slump. You can come, and that causes him to fall into the the junkyard where you're exactly right. He splits into Clark Kent and evil Superman, and they fight each other. But as a kid, it was such a great little, battle. And I remember enacting that with my little brother so many times in our TV room, where I would be the evil Superman, or we would take turns and swap off, and then he would choke the evil Superman until he disappeared, and then he'd pull away, and there's the bright red and blue chest with the emblem, and now he's back to the good old Christopher Reeves blue Boy Scout Superman.
And you can't tell me that android thing, whatever, at the end didn't scare the crap out of you as a kid.
When she turns and the machine like grabs her and like, and she was scary to begin with.
Her eyes then open and they're like silver, and you're like,
yeah,
what?
Right?
No.
Exactly.
Yeah, that scared the crap out of me quite some time. But I will say, this is kind of the point where you see Margot Kidder is losing it, and Christopher Reeve is enjoying success and just letting himself go just a little bit. Nothing against him. I totally would have done the same thing, but he's not the fit and trim Superman from 1 and 2.
That is, I do believe that you are correct. And we have the Lana Lang character introduced, who I prefer 1,000 times to Lois Lane and always have. I don't know why. Which is kind of
because she went on to play Superman's mom in Smallville.
That is true. That is true.
Annette O'Toole.
Yeah. She, but I remember her from when I was a kid and thinking, like, why is he going for this Lois Lane? She's not attractive, but that Lana Lang is, she's a looker. And he, gives her a ring and everything, and it's sort of like, wow, you go, Clark. So I did enjoy that. And then Richard Pryor is very, very enjoyable in the movie. And one of my favorite scenes is in the end when Superman's flying, Richard Pryor, who's afraid of flying, of course, back home. And it's just this sort of like little racial harmony thing that's going on with Superman flying Richard Pryor, and everything's restored back to right. And they've defeated the evil rich white guys, which is good. You got to defeat those guys. We need this to happen again. You know what I've just realized? This whole movie is a metaphor for the society we're living in, like right now. That's what it is. I didn't realize how culturally relevant Superman 3 really is.
It should be required viewing. I really think so.
I think so too. We're talking American history. We need to start teaching this film.
Well, if I remember correctly too, the opening, it's quite elaborate and it's goofy as all get out, but there was something special about it. I haven't seen it in a long time. Was it all one shot?
I don't know. It was on television, and so I was watching it with commercials and all. I jumped in the middle. It was around when with Pryor's impersonating the general. He's going, and he's just being ridiculous. Pryor, and he breaks the stick off on like his own leg, and he gives that little look like, oh, that hurt. And he gives kryptonite to Superman, which is what turns him evil, because it was kryptonite with tar in it, and tar's in cigarettes, and that's bad for you. So it was a nice little mini list. See, we've got cultural relevance, after-school program messages. This is just a good American movie.
Toxic waste or something? Well, there was like a chemical plant that caught on fire.
Yeah, and he saved that from exploding.
Late 80s and stuff like that.
It's a green movie. Remember when he's evil Superman, he punches the oil tanker and there's oil leaking everywhere. But then when he turns back to good Superman, he just uses his super breath and he blows that oil right back into the tanker, bends the metal back so it's all sealed back up. Problem solved. Superman 3, I mean, it brings everything together. We talked about the racial harmony. We talked about, the id and don't smoke because the tar was in the kryptonite and that's what made him evil. So you've got the after school message. And then, like you were saying, the environmental friendly Superman 2, he saves the chemical plant and then evil Superman punches the hole into the tanker and oil leaks out everywhere. And you're like, oh my goodness. And then good Superman goes back and uses his super breath and blows all the oil back into the tanker. He bends the metal back and seals it up so it's all back together and everything's great. And that's what we need. We need Superman. Christopher Reeve's Superman, not Zack Snyder's Superman. Superman 2016. He's got my vote. I'm sorry, Captain America, but that's where I'm going.
Well, he even did one better the next movie with 4. In the Quest for Peace.
True. He got rid of all nuclear weapons. Yeah?
Yeah, we need that right now. Maybe he can negotiate with ISIS.
Right? Where are you at, China? Where are you at, North Korea? Psh, we got Superman. Yeah. So, definitely that's we've kind of not, paid much attention to our segments because we've been throwing these in as soon as we can, but that's one of them, retro. I'm glad we snuck that in there as like our retro, go back and maybe watch that movie and just realize how relevant it really is.
Well, I am sure one person, younger person, meaning in their 20s, will watch it now because we said that, and they're going to come back and be like, I hate you guys. That movie was awful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's our B movie, man. I'm sorry. That's the movie that we love it. We know it's awful. You can admit that something's awful, but still love it. I mean,
it's genius.
Yeah, that's just how it is. Well, Jimmy, lots of stuff that happened this week, but I think we kind of hit all the big points.
I think so too, sir. I think so too. So that ends, I believe, episode 26. And we will let our teacher go because Teacher Appreciation Week needs to be well rested for its Thursday.
Yeah.
And don't forget to check us out on nerdlocker.com, on YouTube/Nerdlocker and YouTube/2nerdydads, Facebook/Nerdlocker, Twitter/Footlocker, Nerdlocker, Nerdlocker. I mean, Footlocker. Go check out Footlocker. Way to go. Maybe we'll get sponsorship now.
They have overpriced shoes.
Yeah. God, I could use some new shoes. Maybe they have Darth Vader on. Sweet.
Do they light up?
That would be awesome. Or they breathe.
It is getting late. I'm punchy.
It's definitely late, sir. So say bye, Jason.
Hey, have a nerdy week, everybody.